Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Andrew.
Hi there. I apologize for being a little bit late. Unfortunately, the public transit is not what it's choked up to be. But thanks for joining us, Richard. I see Lloyd is here. Michael Rendler is here. I think we're still waiting for our special guest from Pakistan. So give me just a moment, and I'll keep my eye on that while I set up my computer.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Okay. So this is good. Actually, Michael, I've just been reading your some of the stuff you've sent. Thank you for that, because I'm trying to figure out who you are, because I was just introduced to you, and I'm impressed with what you've got so far, and what you've described to us, what you're doing, because I think it's really important, especially if it ties into these community bonds and other financial mechanisms that are coming into place. I guess mostly in the United States right now, but hopefully those being a model that can be used elsewhere.
Yeah, that premise of being able to get compliance across all of this public money is really at the core of what we're trying to do, is say, does it really work, or is this just like same old, same old? And so because of the complexity, we need to move the conversation to an AI construct. And and people don't really want to go there for whatever number of reasons. And so a lot of
it's hard to understand.
Well, just
Michael, I want to go there. So you know,
so a lot of this thinking around this ontology and what it really means to make things, and what it means to evaluate where that food chain metaphor is in terms of our physical built space. People don't really want to deal with that and waste cycle. And so there's complexity across the complete conversation. And that's where it starts to break down, because it takes a lot of effort to build things that way. So we get people to
Michael, what you're talking about is being rigorous, and that's what we need right now. We especially don't have the decade to go down any dead-end paths.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and you know, that we use this really simple term. You know, we've been at this a long time, so we call it zoom in and zoom out.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't really understand what that means, but I have a whole bunch of stuff on this writing on what's called the implicit order. And these ideas, both philosophically and conceptually, with what quantum mechanics really means. This is not a trivial game we're involved with. And nature's been working at it a long time. So we just zoom out when we want to zoom out, and we zoom in when we want to zoom in, and we don't realize it's just one continuous construct. And
yeah,
so,
it's a fractal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think I really understand what you're trying to achieve and what you'd like to do. It is obviously very complex. I'm hoping at some point I could actually introduce you and what you do to the city of Markham as well, where I live. I'm hoping, cross my fingers, that the let's say the sustainability office, because we do also have an office of sustainability at the city of Markham, and the people there will actually understand this, because I mean, I've met with them formally, presented to them some of the ideas, for instance, from Home Planet University and their UN Office of the Future, and just over their head, they just like didn't get it at all. And so, but if you have a very concise, easy to understand sort of presentation that they can say, yeah, I get this. It was likely my fault for not being able to convey the message well enough at that point.
Well, I don't have a concept. I have a case study proof of concept. So we already have the whole $30 million system operating. And so we're actually well down the stream. This is not something about, but this piece that Richard Nelson's working on, where it's at the manufacturing level, and I've been talking with Richard for at least 3 years now, where you move from that conceptual manufacturing into a fabrication space and actually do a setup and an operation. This is why that Internet of Manufacturing piece I sent out yesterday is so critical to this, because to get this agile enough to actually build it fast enough and get it online, there are just a lot of pieces. And so having someone like Richard on the team as subject matter expert in that space is going to be really beneficial. And so this, you know, I talked to Bruce from Canada. I've talked to, you know, some people over at UCLA in the Sustainability Institute. But the truth of the matter is everybody's got their silos still, even though they're at the university level, they're informing the city, the city's writing, you know, vision statements and 50-year plans, but there's no blueprint. There's no methodology of implementation. Everything is still, those pictures you saw,
it's ad hoc.
They take the car apart and they make it into 1 million parts and they lay them out in the garage. And that's what we're up against, is that's where we are in terms of this conversation. They're just a bunch of parts. Yeah.
I mean, but it will be dynamic, and I think that's what I was actually trying to get at in the message I sent earlier today I guess it was, I sent it to my colleague Mufaddal, and he liked the idea that this is not actually it was to you. I mean, my response to you is that there's no endpoint here. It's a continuum.
Exactly.
Just like a fractal. I mean, we're aiming for something, but we may never get there because everything will change in the interim, and we'll set new goals on the path.
So I don't know if you had a chance.
It's dynamic, yeah.
I don't know if you had a chance to read my document that I developed, VCAP,
no, not
virtual community action planning, but that's exactly what it's saying, is that this is a process of constant improvement. And unless you have all of the stakeholders buying into it's a process of constant improvement, we're not going to move forward with this. And so these these sustainability design, development guidelines end up being what we try to measure against. So if we apply this Six Sigma model, then we can actually look at constant improvement along the data simulation. And that's what I wrote that VCAP for. But to do that, I need to bring these major players into a common ontology. And this is not simple work, because big groups like Siemens, big organizations like AECOM, big projects like our $140 billion metro system, getting them to really recognize this consistent ontology to build these things at the micro level, zoom in, and at the macro level, you know, the whole world. These are really important conversations we're having. So I think building a cell, for lack of a better metaphor, which is what this 100-unit development might be about, which I call the transitional environment. These will then become case studies, to your point, that this is a constantly improving process. And there's a lot of things missing in the narrative right now, but I think he's trying to address them. You know, let's get a laboratory up so at least we can start to explore the science.
Well, and the other thing I think that's really important is the simulation ahead of time as well. On how this might work in the real world, trying to get as accurate as possible on that, because once the hardware is in place, you really aren't going to be changing that. It's sort of like what's happening now in our cities. We have legacy hardware, legacy buildings, legacy infrastructure. It's in place. Nobody's changing it. It's there unless basically we tear everything down, which nobody's even proposing to do.
Lloyd, I would ask you to allow Michael, if you could, to give a redemonstration of the VCAP that you did last time. Because Lloyd, what he did, he's been talking about this VCAP for years, but I finally saw it in 90 seconds what he meant. So Michael, could you do a Hollywood redo while we're waiting on Mufaddal, please?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull up the file. It's one file, and I appreciate what Andrew says. Again, it has so many interdependencies to actually get it to, you know, be clear to someone quickly. This seems to be doing it right now, and so I'll do a screen share and bring this up real quick, if you'll indulge me here for 1 second.
So I'm fascinated by this, and I really want to learn more. But obviously we're limited in time too.
Yeah, absolutely. So this map, overall map, is a simulation, and so now the city of Los Angeles and many other cities are actually distributing data, and we don't have a community that can use that data. So this is taken from a premise. So I just zoomed in on this, and this is the idea. Let me make it a little bit smaller so we can see it a little better. So this idea, I can move around on this one piece of paper and explain it to you, but at a granular level, zoom in, we have all of this information now for Watts. So this piece is focused on Watts, and we're asked to build a sustainable community. So we have now this map at a very granular level, and something we're working on right now is putting 4,000 trees inside of this polygon. Where's the best place to put the trees? And that's not a simple answer. And so what happens is they also need to build about 9 miles worth of bike lane. Where is the best way to build the bike paths? So obviously the bike paths, the street lighting, and the tree canopy all connect to each other, which then gets into your microgrid and all your conversations about power and power distribution. Well, to do that correctly, you have to go into each parcel and you have to start thinking about these blocks. as 3,000 people settlements. And it's our belief that these can be repurposed as single entities and recreated as sustainable blocks. And that we can do that in a retrofit process. And so what we want to do is we want to take this and use a data model. So this is our data model construct. So we have this thinking that these are our touch points. So we have eight touch points that interconnect in a data system, and they create representation. So this is the representation layer. Okay, so this is how we look at the information. So we have to say, for us to look at the information, we need to have a cross-check across this conversation. So when we go to manage nature, that piece I sent you, Climate Consultant 6.0, is saying, what is the nexus between water, energy, and air quality, or what's called the human comfort zone? So when you look at that, it's called the psychrometric chart. That's kind of the crux of what climate change is really looking at. This is disproportionality, if you will, of where people live and how people live. Let's just start with the human comfort zone. Does our community understand that basic concept? And are they able to see the difference between a development in Saskatchewan and a development in Austin, Texas, and a development in Nairobi? Because these are extremely different climates. And if you don't say that means, if you take the position that doesn't mean anything, then you completely miss doing environmental design. You've just lost it. And that's where we are with these container solutions, is not to say we can't use prefabrication, not to say we can't use methodologies that have to do with automation or methodologies that have to do with standardization. But to say that we can just put this here and we have a housing solution is missing the whole concept. So if we go over here and we look at cultural activities or cultural topologies, these green dots, red dots that are in this model, and these towers that are in this model are what are called cultural transformation spaces. So these become like the cell towers. These become the metro stations. These become where you touch your brother, if you will. You have human interaction. And this is where culture is exchanged. So if we do a 200 unit development, and we really haven't looked at where is the cultural manifestation, we always say learning, teaching, but really it's about a cultural value proposition. So what is the cultural value proposition? How do you measure that? Where is it baseline? So if you concentrate 100 women with children and their refugee, camp, it's a refugee camp, then you have to say, okay, how are we going to transition this entire model? Because what you've done is you've done the same thing with the population that we're doing with crops. What Richard Nelson talked about last time, monocrops. You've done the same thing. You extracted it out, you concentrated the problem, and now what happens when you do a cultural exchange? This, if you haven't watched the movie, I can recommend the movie Social Dilemma. It's talking about how AI is feeding people the same narrative and then amplifying it.
I saw that preview, actually. I didn't see the film itself, but I did see the preview, and I totally understand what you're getting at there. I mean, in terms of
Lloyd, let Michael please continue.
So this idea of having a uniform data, which I sent this morning, data ontology that works across the databases, allows this interdependency and interconnectedness in these 8-node narrative. So the 8-node narrative is what I just showed you. So here's the 8-node narrative. So here's, and then the transformation model, if you will, the simulation model exists in this representation space. So this is representational. It's not truth. This is not a truth. This is just a representation. And so as we move up on this, we get out here. So if you think of this as data processing, what's going on with the data processing, these, what we call the systems of ecology, they're anthropometric. These are not human scale concepts. These concepts of ecological systems, I just gave you one, but if you get to biodiversity, if you get to really understanding food chain and food supply, these are systems that operate very, very differently. And this gets to what's called system design. So down here, I have system design. So part of our development is what's going on with Modelica, what's going on. So we're teaching this to 15-year-olds in Kansas City, and they're showing their city council, why are we not thinking like this? And they're using the geospatial technology. They're using the tool, this same kind of technology, to show the city council, we should be thinking about this when we talk about economic development modeling, because this is where the 21st century is going to be in this digital infrastructure. So, so getting this in the front of the conversation is really critical to us. So then if we go out here, that now what we've linked this to is we've linked this to the 15 career pathways. And these career pathways are the premise that when a kid finishes high school, he's fully ready to make a decent wage at a real job. And you will need this when you have a Six Sigma constant improving society around this holistic thinking. And so that's in essence what we're trying to do with this model and how we're trying to move the model forward.
Thank you, Michael. I really do appreciate that. That provides a basis for all other communications, Michael. So Mufaddal has joined us now, and I'm going to, if I could, Michael, I'm going to replay this and use this as a basis for our further communications. Because unless you have a baseline, you can't work with anything. So Mufaddal, are you there? Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, I'm there. I just concluded a meeting which I was having with my associate in Kenya. So I got a little delayed, and I remembered that, okay, I concluded that meeting, and I'm here now to start the discussion.
Well, thank you. It's perfect timing. So could you tell us a little bit about the meeting that you just had with Kenya?
So what has been discussed in my absence?
Well, just an overview. We recorded it, and I'll share it with you. But Michael just gave us a demonstration of the complexity of the necessity to build from the grassroots up, having the data that's necessary for us to understand how systems are interconnected, just as he's already done here in Los Angeles, and they've done in Kansas City. I propose that this is something we can do in Pakistan and in Saskatchewan and around the world.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I think that is exactly what modeling and simulation is all about. We actually create, a perfect model, virtually using the modeling and simulation, techniques, and then, optimize it and then execute and implement it basically to see that the model works or not.
Yeah, and that constant calibration and then adjustment, because as Lloyd has said a little while ago, it's not finished. It's not, we're the geniuses and we figured it all out, but you can find a lot of problems at that scale. And then when you get to the next scale, that's why I use that term zoom in, zoom out. You get to the next scale, you're going to learn things that you couldn't have fathomed before. But if you don't go through this simulation process with the tools that are available, then you're just like everybody else. Okay, well, that seems pretty good. And you don't have anything to measure against. You don't have any standards. You don't have any methodology. And all you have is goodwill. And the problem with that is you just settle for, well, that's the best we can do. At least we're trying. And to me, this problem has been addressed like that for so long. That's why we're in the state that we're in, because it's just completely disconnected. And in Los Angeles, I'll speak specifically, we've spent money to address homelessness, and it wasn't a trivial amount of money, $1.4 billion. And they ended up doing developments that cost $600 a square foot. it's like has nothing to do with what we really need to be thinking about to transition people. And so having a systematic approach to what this really means, I think you guys are onto something with Saskatchewan. And that's why I'm here trying to figure out, okay, well, where's this next piece? How does it fit together? And so.
That I just wanted to say what went through my mind as you were saying that was that I think there's a saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Lloyd, tell us a little bit more about this decade for biodiversity and what that might mean for this project we're working on in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, well, I was involved in conversations actually with Adam Greenwell and one of his colleagues actually from China, Jenny Young, a few years back, and Jenny had introduced me to this conference that they actually wanted to hold in China to launch the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. And I was always interested very much in the restoration aspects of when I was involved with the biochar initiatives and how we might be able to utilize biochar in sort of decontaminating landscapes and restoring landscapes that have been degraded, for instance, after mining or any other activity that has degraded our environment. And so I was very interested in the possibilities of supporting the UN decade. So I've been very much wanting to bring the youth into that conversation, especially where I am here in Markham in Canada. And I think it's not well known that this is a goal of the UN to achieve this, or to have this decade of ecosystem restoration and to actually move forward. There are some people very, very aware of it, but I don't think it's very much aware. There's an awareness that this is going to be a priority over the next decade or so, starting next year.
Well, what I hope we can do, Lloyd, is leverage this UN decade on the SDGs with our ad hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors, really what we're doing now, to also include that decade on biodiversity. But Lady Alicia Hamilton is here. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself, Lady Alicia, but this really speaks to your Living Green channel and also things that you'll be doing with Nokore. So Lady Alicia, could you introduce yourself if possible?
I'll mute myself.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm taking myself off of mute. Good morning, everyone. And can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, okay, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So yes, our platform has been addressing concerns about what's going on in the world aligned with the SDGs. We try to do vertical channels that can give information about what people need to know to make good decisions and to look at what options are available and to see other alternatives so we can hopefully create new narratives that will address what's happening around the world. And of course, with Andrew's amazing compilation of ambassadors from around the world, people get to see what they may not ordinarily see in mainstream media. Mainstream media, as we know, becomes politicized and manipulated depending on where you live. You even get different so-called news. And so we are attempting through our network and shortly to launch the new Nokore platform, which means truth in the Adinkra language. We're really trying to bring what is real and what are things that we need to know to make the best decision. That being said, the channels, the vertical channels are thematic, and the one Andrew mentions is the Living Green channel. We had introduced everything from options for solar to building your own solar generators, which we did in our community, teaching people to work with seniors so they could have solar generators in case of blackouts in the summer, all the way to HARP, which a lot of people didn't even know what that was. And so what you guys are speaking of here is of great interest to us, to let people know that these options are available, because they may not get them in their own communities or in mainstream media. And so we had gone down for a while, not down, but minimized the broadcast during COVID, and then through some other concerns that I had personally. But now that we're coming back out of that, like even videos like this that are being recorded, discussions, things that will educate people, things that will bring information, we can help get that message out to our own audience, which is upwards of approaching 400,000 subscribers, and then also extending that into the pool of news and see who picks it up, you know, because we are a part of, or have been in the past, part of the news pool, and have chosen to, you know, wait until we had something that was relevant and relative to the movement going forward. And so know you have a home with any of the messaging that you want to put out. We can support with videos and if you want to do a theater and show a film and have a discussion afterwards, if you just want to do a more private chat, because we are a private network versus a public network like YouTube. Some things are not meant or ready for public consumption. We want to get to a point where we are in control of the narrative. And so when we need a private platform, we can provide that as well. We can do it free or paid per view. And so we're really a support system to get behind the initiatives and to help us interface better with each other. And like I said, we're just coming back online, you know, after being at a very minimal broadcast during COVID. I don't know at this moment, because I'm sorry, I'm out at a location. I'm not able to check and see if Living Green is on, but I can certainly activate it. We're going to be activating quite a bit this week as we roll out the Nokore TV and the other two networks. The first one was TRN TV, the Revelation Network, and then You See It TV, the Universal Citizens Network, and the You See It TV and TRN TV are VOD networks, video on demand, with live options for theater and broadcast. And then Nokore is our 24/7 linear broadcast that models regular TV that will be on Roku and Amazon Fire. So I'm just finishing up the build out of Nokore, and then we're going to launch everything with a promo. But TRN is available now, trn.tv. And I believe Living Green is on You See It TV, which will bring back up, we're in the process of bringing all those channels back up again. So thank you for letting me share that. I'm behind you 100%. I've just, time-wise, I haven't been as available due to health concerns and then COVID as well. But now that I'm moving forward, I'll be able to be more engaged. And so thank you for your patience with me, but also know my heart is with you. I just don't always have the time, or had not always had the time available because of some other things going on, but that's being rectified, and I'm super excited about being able to not only share it, but also report on it to my other concerns, working with the African Diaspora Development Institute with Dr. Arikana Chihambori-Kwao, and also, you know, many other boards and things that I'm able to share what I know. So we have a great landscape looking forward as to what, or in regards to what we can do and what we can share. So thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Michael Rendler, you know that for a long time, I've been focused on the grassroots, reaching to the very bottom, because it's critically important to get the grassroots input into any decisions that are made that affect them. So, as you know, Lady Alicia Hamilton, with the Revelation Network, allows us to be not just consumers of content, but producers of content. So, Mufaddal, what I'm asking you to do is treat this like a reality show. And the first webinar we did, or meeting we did last week, consider that number 1. This is number 2. But we do want to have tangible outcomes for what we're doing. Michael Rendler, I've invited Luis Cruz Diaz here. He's in Puerto Rico, and he's brought to the table promise zone and opportunity zones there in Puerto Rico, I believe that your model that you described earlier can work well there. But Louis, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and the executive summary that you prepared for us?
He was on, and then I think he dropped off. So he might.
Okay. All right. Well,
I saw him for a minute.
Yes. Well, let me just tell you, Michael, that I sent along to you an executive summary that he prepared on the promise zone and opportunity zone in Puerto Rico. As you may know, the Department of Housing and Urban Development that has, I think, over 32,000 housing units across the United States also reaches into Puerto Rico and Guam, for that matter, and the Virgin Islands. So my contention, Michael, is that the challenges you've been facing locally here in Los Angeles will be greatly accelerated if you're into an environment that welcomes you. So that's where I'm looking to connect the dots with Luis Cruz Diaz and yourself. So thank you very much for that. Well, Fafo, I'll turn it back over to you. This is part 2. So could you share with us next steps that we can help you move towards with the team we have in place?
Yes, actually, I was, preparing and discussing with one of our associates in Kenya. So the good news now is this, that we have developed a plan of setting up SAMS TQL Kenya also as an FDI company, so that, we can engage all the Kenyans, and our program of, self-sustaining community financed via self-sustaining model, financial model is exactly this, that everyone, 7 billion people can participate with 1 PGC, which is like 1.5 or $2. Everybody has it. And those people who do not have $2, we have a system of giving them Kardan Hasana, we call it. So, whoever doesn't have anything, we give them that, and then, they can work and return it back. So it's like serving with dignity. So that is what we plan to do. And I think just as the good news, we learned yesterday was that now there is a quick, rapid COVID-19 test available, okay, to really move forward and solving the COVID-19 issues. And what we are planning to do is this, that, okay, all the people who will be joining TQL Club now say with $5, because that's the cost of the test. We will be giving them free test to every one of them. Okay, so I mean, for how many, a number of times that test needs to be done, if they are part of our family, they become, and they join TQL Club members, then, they get so the services which we are offering in return of joining a TQL Club for $5, which everybody can afford and everybody will have it, and everybody would love to enjoy and combat COVID-19 and have a healthy life, because that's a concern which everybody has. And that is a reason why we want to really, take all the homeless, out of the dirty life and, give them a clean life, because it's a necessity. It's not a social work, or it's not just a good work. It's a necessity to combat COVID-19. So we can plan out this thing, and the beauty of all the, collective wisdom which is available with us now. And since we are talking about doing it in an engineered way, in a lean engineered way, so all the social models, all the financial models, all the modeling and simulation, which we can do, which is my area of expertise also as a chemical engineer, and we try everything out virtually. And then now idea is to physically implement it also. So we are doing the implementation just in time, because, we learn whether the model which we have collectively developed and chose to, build these Wheel of Life farm school communities, farm schools, which gives the education from preschool to high school. And then in the center of these communities, we will be building SAMS Energime University, climate smart industrial park, so that all the things which these communities will be producing, can be processed and, the climate smart products can be delivered to everybody. And we are primarily focusing on food and then all other products to make sure that the climate smart standard is followed. So this becomes a new ISO 9000 will become obsolete, and then our climate smart standard, and Lloyd can contribute a lot because he has been working a lot on really developing these standards. So those standards then will be implemented so that we know that things will be there. And like what Michael suggested was that these models which we will virtually develop can be continually improved upon, because here we are not just setting up models away from university campuses. These are university campuses itself. So all the research and development and all the activities can happen without constraint of finance, because the finance is there. And just calculate, $5, 7 billion people, $35 billion is there. And now with this platform and, with the kind of networking we have available now, it's very easy to reach 7 billion people. Because we are setting up our companies, FDI companies everywhere in all the UN member countries. Everybody would love to, every government would love to get the foreign direct investment into their country. I have dedicated 5% of my, gold profits from my company going into, each of these countries as a seed capital. So that is a seed capital available for us to immediately execute this plan and give the Christmas gift, of a very, very huge problem of really providing home to all the homeless, or everybody, internally displaced, refugees, everybody who doesn't have home and clean life. It is mandatory to give them, a home and clean life, and we can do whatever, apply all our wisdom, all our resources, and collectively it is very easy to do things. And I think all the organizations which competes with each other in social entrepreneurship platform also now can really complement, because this is a world in COVID-19, everybody has to do complementary things, complement, join hands so that we can fight this virus and all other kind of viruses.
Well, I brought to the table, if you look at the chat, I put in there one link to a company that's in Kenya right now. It's AHIABGA. They're using blockchain technology to provide rural patients throughout Kenya with their own health data. They're working with a religious hospital there, a hospital chain that has over 6 million patients. As of now, they're scaling up. I think they have about 10,000 registers. They have an app that you can download right now for everything you're doing in Kenya to assist your objective there. In addition, we have the Center for African Volunteers. They have 6,000 volunteers right now on the ground in Kenya primarily, but 17 other African countries. So, Mufaddal, what I'm suggesting is that we bring all these together under the umbrella that we have to work with right now. But before I go forward, let me again allow Luis Cruz Diaz, I believe he's with us now. Luis, I gave them an introduction to you of your work in Puerto Rico and the fact that you've done an executive summary about opportunity zone / promise zone there. So Luis, could you please introduce yourself and think about ways that we can adapt what we're doing here in Puerto Rico?
You need to unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself. You're still muted.
Here we go. Yeah. I just had a power outage, so I'm on my cell phone right now. And basically, that's one of the problems that we have all around the countries. Power outages, infrastructure development that needs to be taken care of. What Andrew has been proposing and what we have been working on is a project that can be replicable from what is being done in the States and in Los Angeles, where we have to integrate the communities the government in assisting the local communities to redevelop, redesign their communities, empower them, provide them the resources, the funds, the technology, the knowledge that they can take the initiatives in their own hands and start working. And nowadays, you know that we can't depend totally on the government. The bureaucracy of the government, unfortunately, is pathetic. But entities like the ones that are meeting here, joining forces to make a difference in the world. We're including the devastated zones, community zones. We're also including the promise zones that there's 13, 16 locations where the government has already declared these areas as promise zones. And there is a lot of redevelopment occurring, but we have to take part in that redevelopment. We have to be active with the communities in order for them to be receptive to the actions that we can provide them with. And this is very important that this team outline different projects and alternatives to what we can do throughout the countries. Andrew.
Thank you so much. So, Michael, I wanted to make sure you met Luis Cruz Diaz. He's the one that sent along the executive summary there. But I just believe that the group that we have on the phone right now can all work together collaboratively to get that done. The premise of Luis and I working together over this last year for this ad hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors was originally just designed to raise awareness. But some of us have agreed to work together to commercialize our activities so that we can then support our humanitarian causes. So I just wanted to thank all of you. I'm going to put this in the can, so to speak. But we have, Michael, I'd like you to know, I'd like you to
Andrew?
to Luis. Yes?
I would like to kind of respond to the Ambassador Colonel.
Good. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so based on my research for Puerto Rico, a lot of the first response by FEMA was coordinated through the Army Corps of Engineers. And as you know, I'm on an advisory group with the Army Corps of Engineers. And part of the conversation is where the environmental science interfaces our physical solutions and where the data model migrates across that infrastructure or that data system. So these are conversations that I'm trying to tie directly into a proof of concept here in Los Angeles with our Los Angeles River project, because this is a $1 billion project in Los Angeles. So this data modeling simulation that I keep referring to is in activity right now in Los Angeles that could be applied to Puerto Rico. And what I've realized in my research is the OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium, as a subset of the DoD, actually capturing the data and baselining the data. This level of sophistication is not in the communities. And this is the work we're doing in Kansas City. This is the work we're doing in Watts. This is this curriculum VCAP that's so critical for us to get to what Richard Nelson calls the rigor that needs to take place to solve these types of problems. So I want to share that with the Ambassador Colonel, that we're working directly at that level with the DoD to really talk about what FEMA means. And with your BEMA group, I've met with Charles Sharp, I've talked to Charles in DC, and this is very, very critical that we have this open data platform and that we're able to bring that open data platform down to the neighborhood, to Markham, to Los Angeles, to Puerto Rico, and that it's interconnected with the supporting agencies. So this is the healthcare system, the educational system, the security, infrastructure, and that it comes from the grassroots. It comes from the people really being able to be participatory. So in full agreement with everything Ambassador Colonel said, and I think we have a good team that really look at what is the genuineness about what we're talking about.
I was able to review the documentation that was forwarded, and definitely, as you say, the outline of the projects that you are undertaking and can be replicated here in Puerto Rico, definitely. The resources that you have at hand and the expertise of personnel that you have is enormous. So I am eagerly looking forward to working with this team in outlining the initiatives going forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Michael, do you have any further demonstration that you'd like to share with us? I do want to let you know that the Edfu Foundation, they're based in Oakland, California, but they are providing the this platform where we're communicating now, but also they're providing their 501c4 and 501c3 to connect all of us together in a memorandum of understanding that we're going to agree to work together. And so I'll get that out to all of these participants. And if there are any, I think there are several people that have come on board that have not introduced themselves. So I'll put myself on mute, and if you could unmute yourself and you haven't had a chance to speak, please introduce yourself. Thank you. Yes, Richard, that means you, among other people.
All right, yes, I see Wade, who I haven't met, I don't think, before. So, yeah, well, I'm of course really excited about the opportunity to do what would say implementation, field testing, you know, that would be able to validate our role, you know, in the kind of modeling that Michael is doing. I think the concept is here that everyone wants to save the planet. We've got all kinds of crises. We've got urban emergency. We've got urbanization, 3 billion people moving into cities. Half of them will be unserviced in slums. We've got food crisis. Wow, we've got pandemic and climate crisis. So the situation is that we need to be effective in our efforts here. We cannot afford to go down dead-end pathways. So the modeling and the rigor, you know, the scientific rigor and the analysis has to go together with sensitivity with community and adaptability of solutions for sure. But what we really need is, let's say if we were absolutely dependent on finding an airplane that would take off, right? We have to get this to lift off. If the constraints, if we're unaware of the constraints, you know, we have to work with gravity, we have to work with lift, we have to work with the fuel, we have to be able to make something fly. And so we have to know all these constraints and issues of whether they're financial, the solar energy, the ability of photosynthesis to convert, the availability of the, you know, life processes to turn over, be restored, rewilding, everything that saves the ecology, how we as human beings can stop hurting the planet and start helping instead. So, wow, what a huge challenge. And we have seemingly dozens or hundreds or even thousands of people like us want to come together for solutions. That's also clear. So, you know, in the midst of all the crisis, we have an overwhelming amount of goodwill. Okay, I'll leave it at that. We just need to get going on, let's say, pilot projects that we evaluate, and then we can, you know, base our action on solutions. We need solutions, especially.
Well, thank you so much, Richard. There have been a few other guests that have joined us. If you could please unmute yourself and introduce yourself, I'd appreciate that.
Well, I'll go first. It's Joan Kerr. Is that okay? Can you hear me okay? Yes? Oh, okay, great. Hi, my name is Joan Kerr, and I run the Foundation for Building Sustainable Communities. I'm an entrepreneur. That's my actual business. The foundation is my goodwill, saving the world concept. It was formed in 2003 to help people look at long-term solutions. And we have over the last, since 2003 to 2019, had a number of events that identified, mostly in Canada, but also because I do a lot of international development work, that the idea of communities coming together locally to solve their problems was the overwhelming overarching commonalities that came out of some of our projects. And so we took all the data, as I was explaining to Richard yesterday. These are from our experience, and having engaged with hundreds of thousands of people, both online and offline, the local solutions, creating a model so that people can operate in and giving support was what we found that came from the communities. And so the foundation has three primary focus. By the way, our mandate is to preserve and repair the environment, and as well as to ameliorate the living conditions of the underprivileged. So we're happy that we have sort of the Canadian government approving two mandates, so we can address the environment as well as the living conditions or economic development as we see fit, and it's still within our mandate. So we have for food and nutrition, we took an old concept, a model that worked, which was called the Victory Garden, which focused on food and nutrition, entrepreneurship, community kitchens, and preserving food. And we updated it with today's issues of climate change, and the SMART is how to address the different types of technology. In our technology program, we also have an internet governance course that is ongoing at the moment, and off-grid solutions. And we have a pretty vibrant storytelling component as well. But I think that if we're looking at sustainable development, as we're also an accredited organization with the UN for ECOSOC, I think the time for coming up with comprehensive models is gone. We've got to come up with actions that people can buy into and do, and inspire them to want to be part of something bigger, but is helping their own community. And I think that's what the Climate Smart Victory Garden, actually the Climate Smart Victory Garden is not our project. Our project is a Canadian Victory Garden. The Climate Smart Victory Garden is for projects overall. And what we've gotten feedback from is how easy it is for a community to get together and design a local solution around it, very sort of unbureaucratic and more supportive than it is dictative. And so that's what we've found that has worked. But anyway, I'll be quiet now, and that's a quick introduction. Thanks.
Well, thank you. If I can unmute myself. Joan, I'm glad that you mentioned ECOSOC. We too, the Edfu Foundation is a member of ECOSOC. So what we're hoping to do, Joan, is to bring to the table all of these collaborative elements in one memorandum of understanding that we can add onto and agree to move forward together. Another thing that we bring to the table, though, is access to resources and technologies to assist us. Lady Alicia Hamilton is here. I'm not sure if you heard earlier, but she has a global platform. It's called OTT, or Over the Top, that pushes out to all digital devices. And so the idea is for us to craft a narrative so that we can actually share with the world what this looks like. What we have on the phone or on this conference right now is really a cross section of the world. And we have multiple countries, we have multiple levels of sectors. So this is the reality that what we started here in Los Angeles under the banner of the Encounter think tank has now grown to be Encounter Global. So we have a Facebook page, a group of over 1,600 people. And the people on this line right now, Joan, have open arms to work with you to move this forward. So, but before I go forward, was there anyone else that would like to comment about what Joan said or introduce? Please go right ahead.
I think what John described is exactly 100% synergistic of what we are trying to do. And idea is very simple. I think all the wisdom and experience which is available out there, we should be utilizing it and integrating all of it so that when we are building these self-sustaining communities in this format of Wheel of Life Palm School and SAMS Energime University Industrial Park campuses. So these wisdom can be integrated and we can collectively do this project with agility. That's a whole plan. And I think we want to, since we want to put all the homeless mothers, children, and everybody who is homeless and not living a clean life on an urgent basis, in Saskatchewan, in Pakistan, in Uganda, Kenya, where we are building these communities. So that is the urgency, and we can only, deliver it by combining collective resources and wisdom.
Well, thank you. So Michael Rendler, I've always believed that the E7 Architectural Studios would be the core of what we begin to work with, because from what you've demonstrated today, it's necessary for us to deal with the complexities of the Internet of Things to move forward. So Michael Rendler, are you comfortable in working together with the people and resources you've heard on the line so far?
There's a lot of things we need to pay attention to here. For example, the idea of building a victory garden and, catalyzing a community around a victory garden. I think that's a completely legitimate point of departure. But I think there's concerns. I'll give you an example. I was in the state of Virginia, I'll say a year ago, and maybe 2 years ago, and I'm in the playfield, if you will, and I look out across the playfield and I see this garden kind of in a state of dilapidation. And I asked the tour person, what's going on with that space? And they told me that the state of Virginia 3 years previously had adopted a requirement that all school campuses have a victory garden. And they were very successful with their victory garden and using biology and all the concepts I've talked to Richard Nelson about with what this looks like. They required them to remove all of them because of liability. So what they decided was, because they couldn't manage the food chain, there was too much exposure for toxicity or poisoning or et cetera, et cetera. Now, that could have been a political decision to remove that. But the point is, this document that I put up, chain of custody, and what chain of custody means for the homeless. And as you know, Andrew, I've worked very, very hard in Los Angeles to figure out how the HMIS, and I sent this out in an email, is actually being implemented, because these are laws that have to do with chain of custody. And so this chain of custody piece, it really gets into, well, do we act ethically in our rule system? And that's part of what we're up against, is a lot of places don't act ethically within the rule system. So I share that with you because, as Lloyd said earlier, a lot of good intentions are paved to really disastrous results. And so this working with a team, I'm 100%, a team guy, but this is so much bigger than a hub model. So E7 isn't a hub. We're not a center point. What I believe the group needs to be thinking about is what a network really means. and what it means to operate a network, and best practices in information technology, and how what you're talking about, controlling the narrative and sharing the narrative. This is a really big piece where Alicia Hamilton has worked really, really hard on making sure that platform is in place. Scientists like Richard Nelson, with however many years he's had in this space, you can just hear it from his voice that, you know, when it gets down to the minutia, he's really going to know what's going on. And I think that's network of what I call SMEs, subject matter experts. I'm sure the work that Lloyd's been doing with his community, with his government, those are invaluable resources to our network. And so how we operate as a network, I think, is really important, because we all have a lot of irons in the fire, and making sure that someone, and I've already run into this, oh, that was my idea, so-and-so took my idea. And it's just not going to work like that. It's going to work like what's called first principles. And first principles are science. What is the science underneath this, and how do we get the science into these communities and get them to operate with the science, with the humanities? And I'm going to be bold to say this. So they're genuinely educated, okay? And that means to be critical, all right? At the end of the day, that's all it really means, is they're really going to be critical. And this network is a truth network. And I was just like blown away that you've adopted that word, the truth network, because that's really what it comes down to. Are we being truthful with what we're doing with our lives and with our work? And it's no more complicated than that. So if you're asking me, is E7 on the network? Are we 100% committed to the idea? Absolutely. But when it comes down to making contracts and setting budgets and delivering work products, which we'll call business, that's where you get into what Richard's talking about. That's the minutia. And that needs another layer of fidelity in writing. I was really pleased to read the proposal that was put together for Saskatchewan. Of course, I have 1,000 things I would ask about the proposal. But as trying to put something in place, those are really important documents. What are we paying attention to? And so from that perspective, I'm a partner, I'm a collaborator. I'm part of what I like to call the coLABoratory, because that's all this thing is. It's a laboratory. We're trying to figure it out. And yes, I'm 100% in with the laboratory.
Well, thank you. So,
may I respond to the Victory
Please.
Garden issue?
Of course.
Thanks. It's Joan here. So what we found out when we first started, which we started in Canada, and the appetite, not to use the word, but the appetite for physical work wasn't there for a lot of people, because the perception was that there was food security. I disagreed, but in any case, so what we did was we thought, what is the mentality, mindset of Canadians? They like proven examples. And so we went overseas to prove our model that it could work. And so when we came back and last year and started to invite Canadians, so this is, you know, over in an 11-year period, just so you understand, we're still doing community development, et cetera, and building those relationships that we needed to do, the long-term relationships. In what we found in Africa, we have a project in Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and we're working on Cameroon, that the appetite was different because they had literally food insecurity. And the whole idea of the Victory Garden is that you do include your local council and your local community groups as part of the consultation process. The same as in Africa, they have to do a community committee. And so the buy-in is there. And so for schools, because schools have the 2-month period where there's no one there, it becomes a liability. And that's why we've never focused on schools. We focus on the community. And so request that people invite the schools to come and learn about the biology, the growth, etc. And we work with a lot of youth that way, as opposed to having a school garden, because of the the summer, which is when you grow food in Canada, becomes an issue. So I just wanted to say that, that it's very local in terms of the consultation process, and that you include your political leaders as well as others, just to answer that question. Thanks.
I wanted to mention something. Like we actually, as an organization, Drawdown Markham, we had originally wanted to create this community climate action hub, and I had looked at what Andrew had been building through 5 Points Youth Foundation, this collaboration that he was creating in the community. They'd been doing it for something like 5 years when I first met Andrew. And so what he was doing, I said, oh, I love this concept of creating this collaboration. It was an interfaith neighborhood and business collaborative that he had called it. We were calling it a community climate action hub. It was the public-private civil society academic partnership that was coming together in Los Angeles. Since that time, actually just recently, we've now expanded that, what we originally then called a quadruple matrix partnership idea. Again, public-private civil society academic. We've now expanded that to what we call a HEX partnership. So 6 different sectors of community that we would like to create partnerships at the local level to have those local conversations. And actually, I believe it's heading toward the holistic design criteria. And actually, I included that in a recent email as well. So this is something that actually my colleague Mitch Gold has been slowly introducing to me as well over the years, and I'm getting more comfortable with that multi-actor, more multi-sectoral partnership concept, where we bring in all those voices that we need to hear from at the community level in having those conversations. And the garden itself is that space for having those conversations. And so we have those conversations in the context of food and in the context of the culture of food. And I think if you think of the word agriculture, the word culture is in that word, describing what we are doing as we grow food. This is a cultural exchange and concept of what communities do. We exchange around food. And so this is the idea of I think the CSV garden, and even now the Victory Forest as well, where food is being sort of the center of our conversation. So I just wanted to mention that the partnerships and the conversations that happen within the communities as we globalize the SDGs is really, I think, what Joan is trying to say in terms of why CSV gardens, why these climate smart victory gardens.
I have a question for Michael. What is the status of 3D printing technologies in terms of building these communities with agility?
Well, there's a thing called site construction, and there is a thing called offsite construction. And offsite construction is manufacturing, and site construction is assembly. Okay, so yeah, there's examples of large, and again, this goes to my earlier conversation of scale. The real issue is scale. Now what they're talking about is, you're asking about agile manufacturing. So there's people talking about what Andrew William calls the Internet of Things, actually being able to fabricate electronic equipment out of 3D fabrication. So when we look at like that dome, there's 2,000 products inside of that dome. Are all of those products locally manufactured? Are they imported? What does their food chain look like? Can I 3D print every object that's inside of there? Is that even feasible? So there's all of those interconnecting questions that we really need to think through. And I think the closest person actually to putting something on the table is Mr. Nelson, because he's talking about skin, envelope, transparency, volume, mechanical integration, IoT. And so if I look at his concept, you know, I have questions and I have issues, but it doesn't mean they're not solvable. And so that is where how I would land that question, is that the scale issue is really the crux to this, because do we make the building in pieces? Do we make the building in factories? Do we ship the buildings? What does this environment really look like? And I want to go up to what Lloyd said. The cultural proposition is really at the crux to this. What, at the end of the day, does it mean to have a community? And what does that activity look like? And so I'm in education, so I think that's the space where the cultural proposition is mitigated, but I think it's been hijacked by, I'll say, bad actors. And so now getting things to be real and legitimate to our underserved communities is really what needs to happen, because they're pretty aware of this. So digital fabrication is core to how we're going to move forward. And I use a different concept. I use the concept of agile manufacturing or on-demand manufacturing. And I don't think we need to make everything in Detroit and ship it. I think there's lots of stuff that's talking about local source, and local source our process means local source our workforce. And so what we can do in Africa and what we can do in 2020 in Nairobi may be very different than what we can do in Los Angeles or what we can do in Markham. But I think we can build frameworks, and I think we can build processes, and I think we can recognize we're one rock orbiting around the universe. And so, yeah, there's stuff we can share, there's stuff we can exchange, there's things we can do digitally, but that would be my answer. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I see the YouTubes, hey, I can print out the building in 15 minutes. I can snap it together with these prefabricated panels. I've seen all of that, but I'm an architect, I've studied design, I've studied human engineering, and I can tell you, it really gets down to the community owning the process. Because once they own the process, they own the solution. And that is the game changer. And these tools in a group like us have the capability to bring that forward. We really have the capability of bringing this new thinking online. And there's no one more committed to that than myself. And I have example 20 years of work, it can be done. So it's not like I'm hoping. Okay, I already know it can be done. I know it can be done at an international scale. I know it can be done at a national scale. I've talked to Andrew about sovereignty, and sovereignty is a real word. Okay, and so I want to make sure that what I know in how we make things isn't necessarily ISO. Okay. The US GBC is not ISO, and I know what ISO means. Okay, so I want to be clear about what we're trying to do and how and I know what technology imperialism is, and I'm not really interested in that. Okay, so these are sensitive subjects, and again, as a truth network, I want to answer you, Mufaddal, as clearly as I can. They're good. Digital fabrication is good at some scales. It's not good at other scales. I noticed in the background of Colonel Lewis's office, he's got a printer. Why won't that printer be a 3D printer? I have a printer on my desk, costs $100. Okay, I don't go to but I could send it over to FedEx and get the prints if I need a big number. So it really gets down to, we got to be smart about our production cycle. That's why I put the Internet of Manufacturing. This is not a simple thing, again. Okay, so we don't want one size fits all. We all have different shirts on. We want to make our own choices. This is human nature. And this is how we're going to move forward.
Richard, what I mean, what we have
maybe,
is this.
maybe if I could just add a little into that as well,
Please,
is that,
right.
yeah, what I think is one of the keys, what I think could be a focus for all of us is the food. So in other words, when we're talking about a climate controlled environment and we think about it as a home, that's cultural. So, but when we think about growing plants and growing food and having a regenerative and very smart and energy efficient production of food, everyone needs that. And as I was saying, sort of like an airplane, you know, we need it to be, you know, have a density of and quality and all kind of factors that overcome our limitations of energy and water and nutrient inputs and all of those things, and even labor, right? Which again, if young people find it's 21st century, it's not the victory garden of the Second World War, you know, kind of history. That's a beautiful example. You know, it's inspiring to think about what the last generation did to bring us to where we are now. But what do we have to do now when we face our crises that are so much different, right? 40 years, 50, 60 years ago, population was less than half what it is now. And we're going to see it again move forward further. And we're in a situation where in those 40 years, the ecosystems of the earth have been so damaged. So, and I reassure, you know, that what Michael is talking about is with a sensitivity, although science needs to be involved, at the same time, we are totally interested in all indigenous knowledge, ancient knowledge, you know, learning from nature, right? Which we have lost touch with nature. So therefore, we can be instructed by ancient knowledge that has almost disappeared and bring that into our current, you know, calculations. And we can model them, put them in a supercomputer now. That's a new thing. So innovation is important. But so the first focus that I'm interested in is the closed environment for an ecosystem, not for people to live in. Human habitat is even a bigger challenge. But you know, if we can grow our food locally everywhere, protect it from climate change, protect it from, you know, the disasters that we see are happening everywhere. You know, it's hard to protect from floods. So, you know, you have to be smart about location. And that's an issue for migration, right? And more refugees as sea level increases and hurricanes and typhoons become stronger. So you have inundation of coastal areas. Well, so we will have more refugees. We'll have 150 million now. We'll probably have 500 million in maybe a decade. So, you know, unless we address this sensitively and, you know, come together and start with first things first and not culturally clash, right? My home doesn't have to look like your home and so on like that. But, you know, address how do we have our food? Everyone has to eat every day, right? No child should be hungry. So responsibly, how do we address that problem? And we'll have to go past concepts of victory garden or any pre-existing methods for growing because they are all challenged, drastically challenged. So we don't want elitism and niche solutions for wealthy people, you know, to feel satisfied when a billion people are hungry, right? We need real solutions that work everywhere, very low cost. You know, one of my principles, of course, is dematerialization, you know, and of course, a greenhouse is a model for dematerializing buildings. Yes, you do kind of print them in flat sheets, right? The cover materials, the fabrics. Fabrics are flat sheets. They're almost like printed, you know, weaving, right? Weaving is an ancient technology. So, and now we have plastics and high materials technology. We can create these building envelope with transparency and almost like there's no weight, you know, of the weight of the building is ridiculously, you know, and the structure is dematerialized too. So of course we have structural engineering and materials technology design, but these are not heavy buildings where you see them pouring out clay around and building what is basically a cave. You know, that's not a building for plants. We need transparency, we get lightweight, we get low cost, and this is modern technology which comes with, you know, these kind of capabilities.
In Pakistan, we have in Karachi, we plan to adopt one of the 200-acre site, which is currently closed, and it's Pakistan Machine Tool Factory, built by Swedish people. Fantastic, you know, facility, but due to, you know, political situation, it is now closed down, and it is a burden on the government. So we can adopt that, and that can be transformed into a SAMS Energime University climate smart industrial park, whereby we can apply all the agile engineering you know, technologies over there to build the components which is required to build these communities, you know, across Pakistan. And what we have in Pakistan is 472 dump sites, okay, where all the garbage, you know, very poorly collected garbage gets dumped, all right? So we can have those dump sites also transformed into, you know, these Wheel of Life Farm School campuses, utilizing all the waste which is available out there and transforming that waste into, you know, value, which is the expertise of Dr. Paul Alvear, and, you know, Richard can utilize all the materials which is available out there. You know, Ken Telford is very good at doing it, you know, utilizing agricultural waste like rice, farm waste and plastic waste to build these wonderful Koto homes. So all these components are needed, right, to really build these or assemble these communities basically. And we can use facilities like this. And since it is a burden on the government would love to, you know, give us that, you know, facility. We adopt it officially, and we transform that into a model, benchmark, climate smart, agile manufacturing industrial park. It's a free zone. You know, so it's a wonderful concept to really, you know, implement in Pakistan, and then we can duplicate that model globally.
So Mufaddal,
we have to really transport these components internationally through logistic chain. These components are locally manufactured in all countries.
So Michael, could you explain the collective impact model and whether or not Mufaddal's organization could be the anchor institution?
Yeah, I think I can try. So this premise of a collective impact model came out of Stanford University. It's associated to something called the social impact bond. And the premise of it is that groups come together to solve systemic social problems where there's subject matter expertise across the group. So it can include sociology, it can include engineering, it can include education, healthcare, where you actually start to look at what Lloyd talked about this whole of community approach to problem solving, and all the stakeholders in the conversation that are legitimately representing the community, not asserting, as I heard earlier, which was really well said. So that collective impact is to say, these groups of people are working together towards this idea, and they're able then to say, we are representative across this domain or these domains. And so I believe that's what it is. And I want to kind of respond quickly where that would be applicable to what Mufaddal is talking about. What is the real difference between extracting gold in Africa and sending it to Mitsubishi to make gold bullion cubes and going into a trash dump and figuring out how to repurpose those resources? And so this concept of being able to look at the digestive tract of industrialization is not simple, okay? And so extracting, sorting, this is chemistry, this is biology, this is engineering, this is energy, this is a sophisticated, and if you look at what they're doing in San Francisco with just food waste and how that's now connected directly to how we're growing food in the Central Valley and providing a fertilization process, this is where this closed loop starts to take on scale. And so I believe the collective impact means, how do our cities actually operate? I'm kind of on the same page with Mr. Nelson in that these cities, these cores are going to start to grow very quickly. And we don't really have any understanding of how we're going to close loop them. So these investigation, these projects that could go on in Pakistan for these sites, we'll call them the waste sites, these are processes that actually need to be adopted in all these different urban cores of America, because the waste cycle is just completely misunderstood, and that's well documented.
So Joan, I think I answered your question. This group, I think, needs to be configured into a consultancy with either your organization or ours at the eco-cycle level to deliver sustainable development goal solutions globally.
Yeah, we'll have to, yeah, thank you for answering the question. Yeah, so we'll have to discuss how that will happen and what's the best option. I'd be happy to have that conversation. I just wanted to also address something that was brought up about elitism and old models. We've been doing the Victory Garden for 11 years. And here's some stats that absolutely we found that has worked. That people were, and this is worldwide, so we actually did track our impact. We've given out over almost 60,000 pounds of food to food banks. We've had over 23 events, face-to-face events, where we received response from people. That's just in Canada, never mind events all over the world. I just want to point out as well that I'm the humanitarian advisor for the IEEE, which is the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineer, have been since 2009. I'm also the chair for ICANN, which is a governing body of the internet, and I'm an advisor for the Public Interest Registry. So I have access to a lot of people and getting feedback on what works and doesn't work. So we look at ourselves as more as a community development organization. What does community need? They need successful models. They need to know that something has made an impact. And continuing with the data from the Victory Garden, because it's so localized and includes so many aspects that people can be attracted to. So we've got the numbers of people that have started Victory Gardens. We have projects that are starting to be economic development. Like I said, we've given over 60,000 pounds of food over an 11-year period, hosted 23 events, had over 25,000 people that we've engaged face-to-face, and 1.1 million online, all giving positive feedback to the solutions that the Victory Garden has given them. And that's why we went to more of an education, because that was the biggest thing that came back, was how can you now build this community development project into an educational and sustainable economic development project. those were requests that came from the community, not something we're imposing on them. And part of the attraction was that it was a successful model 100 years ago, and how can it be applied to today? And the biggest thing is, one, it's so agile that it responds to a local community addressing, food and nutrition security, technology, and it's in the moment while reaching back to that cultural sensitivity. So I just wanted to just say that. Thanks.
I'm in a loud place, so I'll turn it back over to Mufaddal as next steps.
So I think in conclusion, what we should do is this, that all these models which we talked about, and we can definitely integrate all of it in a working model and solve this urgent issue to make sure that the data is available for us to validate all these different models as we build these communities, utilizing the current best digital technologies, construction technologies, which Richard has developed, which Kane has developed, and which Dr. Paul Olivier has developed, and build these communities, make sure that the homeless gets a clean home, and as a Christmas gift, a 3 months timeline, very, very aggressive goals, which we set in Procter & Gamble, as a P&G manager. So we are setting those goals, and idea is to really now implement these UN SDGs, with agility to solve this urgent COVID-19 problem. So we can control these COVID-19s, and then we can enjoy 2021, in a comfortable way, and making sure that all these models and all these data will then be available for us to really, continually improve and perfect our models, so that, when we build the next one, it is built more cost effectively and with agility. So I think agile manufacturing, techniques and everything needs to be integrated. I've got 875 acre site. Anything we want to do in that site is available in KPK. In Pakistan, we can adopt Pakistan Machine Tool Factory and transform that into an industrial park campus. So all these facilities are available. I'm sure PM Imran Khan is going to give the best incentives for our SAMS TQL Pakistan, so that we can implement these projects with agility and make sure that everybody is delighted.
I think, Joan, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, this is Michael. I'd like to respond to Joan's comment about impactful. And I know this is factual for Los Angeles. I don't know about Canada, but in Los Angeles, they have a huge demand side response to food spoilage. And they're collecting all this food because it's going to spoil. And then they have a whole distribution network. And I don't know how many tons of food they're distributing, but all that food that's being redistributed before it spoils is a huge logistical project in Los Angeles. And my question to that is, it's all done by 501c3, it's all nonprofit driven. It's a donation system, if you will, which I'm sure there's pieces on the other side. There's refrigeration networks, there's truck networks, there's an energy density relationship to this food cycle. And what I'm curious about is that impactful? And how do you measure that? And what does it mean when you give away food? And how do you measure that? And that is something I said in the last meeting, because I know that this is happening, and we have a center in Watts that's giving away food every Thursday, and there's a video made on it. And I want to know about meaning. I want to know about people's lives and their meaning. And does that bring meaning into their life? Yes, it sustains them. Yes, it's important. But is it going to provide impact in a transformational, meaningful life? And therefore, a lot of these concepts are interim concepts towards sustainability, because we shouldn't have that level of food waste in a productive society to begin with. And we're going back to cleaning up a waste cycle that's really not working correctly to begin with. And that gets back to what Mufaddal started with. What does this energy density really look like? And how do we actually simulate that? And then I think we can talk about what's impactful, because we don't know what we don't know. And so communities can say this was impactful towards what? And I use the term dotocracy because I've watched these community development corporations hand dots to working groups and ask them which solution do they like the best. And it's an emotional response without adequate knowledge to make an informed decision. And I'm very, very concerned with this methodology, and I see it used all the time.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to draw your attention to the chat, because we also haven't talked about the pandemics that we're in the middle of. This speaks to the Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction. And I believe we can employ some UN habitat, new urban agenda terminology to help close that gap. And as to your question, Michael, I'm suggesting that the Edfu Foundation step in, because we have not just the 501(c)(3), but the 501(c)(4). So in lieu of a B corporation, I believe this consultancy can deliver solutions from the profit level as well as from the humanitarian level.
So how does the B corporation work? I mean, when we are incorporating our SAMS AHIABGA-Global as an FDI company, is the B corporation a non-profit, or is it a for-profit organization?
Oh, Michael, could you speak to
that? My legal license isn't robust enough to answer that question. I'm not really exactly sure, because things get into tax-based questions.
Then I can, but it's a little loud here. It's very simple to just Google B Corporation. But it was devised about 5 years ago in New York, maybe longer, but it's now spread to other states like here in California. It functions as both a for-profit and non-profit entity. As long as your output delivers humanitarian solutions, you can, in fact, generate profit for individuals that are involved with the corporation. But as I say, as of right now, the combination of a 501(c)(3) and a 501(c)(4) can deliver the same solutions, and we can deliver that through the Edfu Foundation.
You know, I just comment here that we can collaborate without forming a corporation among this team. It would be very probably tedious in a way. I think that, you know, there is such things as consortia, people who come together for a purpose. It can also be contractual joint ventures. We have already a lot of nonprofits who can be trustees to implement any kind of plan that we want to execute immediately without, you know, so I think as long as we have a project basis, that we proceed project by project, things can go fast. I would recommend that. I have projects around the world. We have many individual teams. They all can crowdfund. They can all raise money. They can raise money in their own community. What they need to know is what to do. What is the thing to do? And I think that's where the informed decision, what do you do with your money? Because I see people spending money and losing their money because what they intended to do, as we said, good intentions, but don't deliver on a profitability, on a capacity to continue, on a sustainability aspect. We see a lot of technological hype as well out there, especially as relates to food. You know, the whole global system is in a state of dysfunction, you could call it. And we're in the pandemic where food can easily and quickly become global crisis. In fact, the UN is projecting that within months, we would see 300,000 deaths per day of food famine, which is unlike any other famine the world has ever experienced. You know, because, you know, it's similar to the climate problem. You know, people experience bad weather and droughts, but then they recover. But climate change is not like that. Climate change is progressive failure. And progressive failure ultimately results in collapse. That's where our food system is. It would take another session to speak to that, but maybe we should talk about food if one of our goals is food, because I see people want to talk about community. They want to talk about eco-villages and how to create, you know, revive the sense of community in which we need. But food crisis can hit us fast. And community rebuilding, I see it like rebuilding the ecology. The ecology of the planet is destroyed. It will be a multi-generational task to rebuild the Earth's, you know, healthy environment. And we can't take that on now. We have 5 to 10 years to take on a task that can save billions of lives, millions of lives, certainly. But, you know, because we can see that we're on a trend with pandemic accelerating the trend, climate change emergency accelerating the trend, because the food system was already going to collapse, because it is based on petrochemical resources that are exhausted in about 10 to 20 years. So let's talk about the food, you know, dilemma. We talk about the social dilemma. Why not talk about the food? Talk about energy. You know, it's a very serious issue, and water, of course, is going on.
Richard, Joan has to leave. So the short answer is that she voted yes for the consortium. I'm voting yes for it. However, part of the reason for this is because Gerald Bennett with the Housing and Urban Development Department asked that there be one entity through which he could direct funds. So I do intend for there to be some collective impact collaborative where there is one administrative or fiscal agency to deal with solutions.
Yes, that's generally how we would do it. The consortia would agree that one entity would be the administrative agency or entity, and then we would all make our input into that effort. And again, it's better to design it around projects. Even they can start small. There can be numbers of projects as well, not just one. And so that's efficient.
I think the idea, though, is to agree on one entity, and I think Edfu Foundation, for me, makes sense. Andrew is very good at coordinating these types of things. He's the one that brought us together in the first place to have these meetings just last Sunday, and so I'd vote to move forward on that as well.
So again, I'm good for and, not or, as long as we move forward. So one thing we can do is provide through the Edfu Foundation is a base camp technology that we can handle project management. I'm not versed in it, so I'm offering to anyone that can to take advantage of it, or someone else to set up a project management tool that we can move forward with.
I just want to address the concern which Richard raised. And by building these Wheel of Life farm schools in global farms and gold mines, we can sort of, seamlessly integrate climate smart technologies into these farms, and then, make sure that the optimum productivity is realized and everybody can enjoy climate smart immunity boosting food locally, so that all the issues related to logistics of shipping these food globally can be sort of eliminated. And a question to Michael about what is the potential of integrating the best technologies so we can do climate smart gold and diamond mining, which is one of our areas. And we are working with the gold and diamond miners of Africa to improve their quality of life and make sure the best technologies gets integrated over there.
Yeah. So let me do some research on that. I got to jump off of this call as well, and I would like to respond to that intelligently. So let me do some research on that, and I'll report back to you with our next meeting. Specifically in that space, and I think that this prioritization that Richard is pointing out is really key. That we need results, and talking is talking. So I think that's a good wisdom to add into today's meeting.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for coming.
Hi there. Hi, it's
Yes,
Joan. Yeah, thank you for letting me speak. I have to jump off as well. Could we have a call around how the consortium would work? I mean, overall, I'm in favor of it, and maybe look at some of some of the projects, who can be service providers, how is it going to work, that kind of stuff, things. I'd be happy to be part of as well. But by the way, thank you. In case I go off, thank you for hosting this, and this was great information. Thank you.
Great. So Richard, I'll let you set up the meeting for the consortium. You have the most information as subject matter expert, so set the time.
Okay, I'll do that, and I would say that Joan's experience in consortia is enormous. I'm experienced in working with them, but I'm not I'm a technician in the projects, really, more so than a leader of the project. So I think
Joan, so the ball's with your court. You set the meeting.
Michael and Joan and you administratively, Andrew, we have a wonderful team here. It's
well, let's make it a true consortium. Maybe we can connect and the three of us and make it an actual consortium decision, and from there. How's that?
Wonderful. Yeah. Will do.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I have to run.
I love you so much. Talk to you
All
soon.
right. Okay, thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you, Joan, very much for coming on this call.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Able to meet everybody.
All right. Thank you so much for everyone's time.
All right, I'm gonna close up. Any closing thoughts? Last thoughts?
I guess I wanted to just see if I can go back to the comment that was actually made earlier about sort of the idea around sovereignty. I believe it was mentioned by Michael, and I had these conversations actually, and it's interesting. Richard is living in Montreal and in Quebec, and half my family is French, and that's a word very commonly used in Quebec. Sovereignty. There's a whole sovereignty movement. My family, part of my family is Quebecers, and I had a conversation with my aunt this summer when I went up to Malartic-Abitibi in northern Quebec about the cultural difference of Quebecers and how open they are to this idea of doing their own, finding their own path and finding their path forward in a way that's sovereign to their own abilities and communities and the way they want to see their own future moving forward. And I think it makes Canada unique, having Quebec in Canada and having that culture of sovereignty. And it comes, I think, as at a good time as we try to move forward for the globalization of the SDGs.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lloyd. Unless there's any closing thoughts, I'm going to close.
Hi, Wade Lillico here from Laverna, Saskatchewan. I was introduced by Heidi Little to come to this conversation, and this fits in with everything that I've done here for the last 15 years. Off-grid livers and had free food gardens and a few other initiatives that have worked well here. I've got a project that I've worked on for 3 years that might suit very well what I've heard in this conversation. I'm working on another alternative energy source that involves very simple minerals and salts. So I'm very interested in continuing on the conversation with everybody that's here.
Wade we have selected, and Heidi has provided us with this Saskatchewan model, least populated area of the world, and we can actually, populate them with all the homeless mothers and children in these Wheel of Life Farm schools. And that's how the whole discussion got started. And I think let's work together to identify the sites available over there so we can really start executing the Saskatchewan project.
Okay, greetings. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I am so sorry. My phone went out. I'm talking and I'm just wondering what's going on. So I would like to submit to the consortium to a regular series time slot on these matters on the Nokore platform when we open up, like to have a regular show, and we could schedule it out over like 13 weeks or however. But as we do this, it's such important information. I believe that by building a regular time slot, that we could provide to the audience a regular series of information, and then also in between shows, gives them a chance to submit questions, to submit commentary, to keep the dialogue going with the subject matter expert of the day speaking on certain topics. So I'd like to submit that to the group as an ongoing regular show that we can share with the world. And that's what the platform was built for. And I think there are many people around the world who could benefit from all of this great information that they're not going to get mainstream, and also gives us a chance to hear what they have to say, like what's going on in their community, how can they apply these things in their community. And you never know what we'll find out there once we open it up to the public to hear what you have, and also to promote the products and solutions that we've talked about. So that would be my submission and support from the network side, is to do a regular ongoing engagement series with you all as subject matter experts on the various topics. And we can work with whoever's going to be the point person on lining up what that is. But I see a great benefit to the community to get this information and to engage them as well. So if you're interested, I would love to submit to have that available to you. Thank you.
Yes. And Wade is here representing, Wade, I believe her name is Nancy, but she also brings We the World with a variety of technological outputs, but content is key. So I'm just suggesting that we agree with you and set up a specific time every week right now to follow up this conversation. So Mufaddal, what would be a good day for you?
Well, I think 9 p.m. Time is perfect for me. And it's an end of the day, so any day is fine with me, where everybody is comfortable.
Well, then I suggest Lady Alicia perhaps on Sunday, which is the beginning of the week. And most people are not working. So if that's comfortable to you, tentatively, we'll set that for every Sunday at 9 o'clock a.m.
9 o'clock, well, what, 9 o'clock in India is what time?
9 o'clock a.m. for us is 9 p.m. for him.
Oh, okay.
So 9 o'clock a.m.
Yeah, that could work. That's a great time, 9 a.m. Yeah, so, but we'll have to plan out what the subjects are each week. We can do between citizens doc going into October, so we could look at between now and to the holiday, you know, what the subjects would be each week, and have one person speaking on a particular matter, and then the rest of people, you know, contributing, but relative to a subject, because that's how I can promote it on the other side when it's specific to one particular matter, and then the following week it's a different one. And we can work out that calendar, Andrew, as we talk about, you know, working on the network calendar and follow up. But yeah, that would be wonderful. And then I can promote it out to our audience and beyond, that this is what we're going to be talking about, who's going to be speaking, what they can expect, and then how they can engage as well. So yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on that, and just to mention that actually this Sunday is Global Cooperation Day.
Right.
There is a honoring Aretha Franklin Amazing Grace webinar.
Is that happening? Is that actually
I don't know. Okay. But I had talked also, and there's an ongoing conversation now to try to do a sort of a global cooperation day virtual candlelight event. Again, I don't know if that's going to happen, but maybe we could have our first discussion on this Sunday as sort of a launching.
Yeah. Were we playing the movie, or what was supposed to happen? Were we going to watch the movie and then talk about it, or just observe? I was unclear as to what the intention was. And as I mentioned, my husband is the arranger and conductor of that album, and he is starring in the movie. And I was like, look, if you're doing Aretha Franklin, here's the man who wrote the music, you know, and was part of it. And he was very happy to participate. I'm sorry, I'm just coming out the hospital. And so I'm just catching up as quickly as I can without, to my family's discontent, not doing too much. But he's very interested in being a part of that, because he's been interviewed by the New York Times and all these people because of his input and what happened in that moment when they were making this amazing moment in history with James Cleveland and Aretha Franklin. So I was just unclear as to, you know, if you were showing the movie or if you wanted commentary, but he's very interested, and I will make myself available. I'm on a tail end of transition here, so I'll be better
let's have a conversation with Adam. I think Adam's the center of Global Cooperation Day. He's the one that came up with the whole idea of having Global Cooperation Day on that October 4th. He's going to be the most passionate about doing this if we're going to do anything. So maybe just three of us to start. Just have a conversation with Adam and see what his thoughts are.
Okay.
Because I just made the suggestion about virtual candlelight dinner or candlelight digital, sorry. I made the suggestion. I wasn't going to do it, but was hoping somebody would raise their hand and say, yes, let's do this.
I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, Lloyd. My apologies. But if it works, it works. And just know that we're here. But I think Alexander's participation would be very special if you're talking about the Amazing Grace album, because he's actually conducting and arranging the music. You'll see him in the movie. If you've seen the movie, he's the guy in the black that's, you know, moving the choir and
well, Alicia, could you show the meeting?
Can I what?
Could you have an event? Show the movie. Have the conversation.
I don't know what the rights, Andrew, on the rights. That's why I wanted to know if you guys were planning on showing it. I don't know what the rights are right now. If it's on YouTube, I guess you could. But I mean, my understanding is that it's playing on some of the platforms. Sorry, I'm at a site right now. Okay, I don't know what the rights are. Oh gosh, sorry. I don't know what the rights are to showing it. I didn't know what that was. That's what I was trying to find out as well.
Well, perhaps then we could just talk about it, if nothing else. But that would be up to you and Alex to set aside time to have a discussion about it.
No, we can do that. Just know what the plan was, and if there isn't a plan, we'll make a plan that works. I mean, I'm just jumping in. I'm like jumping in double dutch, trying to jump in while the ropes are.
All right, then you and Lloyd and Adam can work it out.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right, I'll follow this up with maybe we'll have a discussion after this. All right.
Okay.
So I guess this concludes things.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, wait, I'll just make sure everyone has their contact information in the text if we don't have it already, so we can follow up. And I'll send a link out to this recording after it's uploaded and downloaded.
Okay, thank you very much again, Andrew, for putting this together. And I want to thank everybody else as well for joining. I think this is a really important initiative as we're trying to bring a whole bunch of disparate people together.
Okay, well, this is another conversation for Andrew. So thank you so much for Malafu. Go right ahead, I'm sorry. Oh, it looks like you're signing off. Okay, so I'm going to end this. Everyone have a fantastic day. We'll follow up with the Revolution Network News, trn.tv.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Mufaddal, you still have the floor, so go right ahead.
Yeah. So what I'm suggesting is this, that the hot topic is providing Christmas gift of home to homeless, the initiative of Heidi Little. And then we select the sites and, all the other logistics. And I think every week we should be really sort of updating on the progress, because, idea is not to discuss these things, but idea is to really move forward with action and, show that this is the progress we have made. And this is the timeline of really meeting that goal, so that by Christmas, everybody has a nice, clean home and we minimize homelessness.
I love it. And what we can do is start compiling any video or data that you have about the work done so far, and then perhaps begin with a retrospective and then move forward. But you have to decide too how long each show is going to be, whether it's 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, so we can plan in advance what the agenda will be, and we can make a schedule so that people know what to expect.
Definitely, I think it should be a 1 hour is a very comfortable, time frame. So people can really provide updates. We discuss next steps, and we should be planning it like a corporate meeting, So time is utilized properly, updates are given, and, next steps can be, realized during the week. And then everybody starts executing it, and we provide the updates every week.
I agree completely, and ask only that you perhaps put together an email or a one-pager or a description of what you understand, and that way we'll have a baseline for how we move forward, if that's comfortable with you.
Sure.
Okay.
Email communication is perfect, and I think sharing the video, I like sharing the Zoom video as, because we can always go back and, come out of the email maze, because these things are easy to, compile. And we can go over it and say, okay, what are my responsibilities for the week, and then, move forward.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure I get this video to you as soon as possible, and also part 1.
Perfect.
Okay.
Have a productive week, and we'll see you next week.
I love you so much. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. बस थोड़ा सा मिला भी दे तो आप में जाए।